Shabbat Shalom, everyone. On Wednesday night, as we gathered for Tisha B'Av, we sang the famous words from Psalms about Yerushalayim. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. I found myself thinking about the many, many Jewish people who have recited those words over centuries and even millennia, during times when there was almost certainly no hope that they themselves would ever actually reach Jerusalem. I thought about how it feels to carry a longing with that level of intensity and devotion, even when you are pretty clear that the object of your desire will never be realized. As this week's Parashat opens, Moshe is longing for something with a great deal of intensity and devotion, even though he is pretty clear that he will not be able to achieve his desire. He begins the Parashat by telling the Israelites, Bnei Yisrael, how he pleaded with God to be allowed to cross the Jordan River and enter the land with his people, but God refused. The verb he uses, for which the Parashat is named, Vaethanan, is only used 2 other times in the Tanakh. One of them is familiar to us from our morning liturgy this morning. Elecha Adonai akra ve'el Adonai etchanan. Melech David, King David, pleads to God, I called to you, O God, and I made my longing-filled appeal. King David also uses this verb in a moment of great intensity, begging God not to hide from him and to heal him when he feels close to death. Clearly, this verb, Vaethanan, packs a lot of yearning power in it. The fervor of Moshe's plea in this week's parasha and the poignancy of the psalmist's longing for Jerusalem in the words that we sang to mark Tisha B'Av got me to wondering about longing as a spiritual state. Jewish tradition has an ambivalent relationship to longing. On the one hand, longing can be a destructive force that clouds our vision and causes us to make very unfortunate choices. We learn in Pirkei Avot that ta'ava, intense desire or longing, is one of 3 things, along with envy and the pursuit of honor, that take a person out of the world. What does it mean that these things take us out of the world? And what's so bad about that? Perhaps what it is that all of these are desires that can prevent us from being connected to the reality of our lives. We can become so busy running after the things that we long for that we fail to notice the many blessings that are right in front of us. We saw an example of this several weeks back in the book of Bamidbar, when the Israelites complained to Moshe about the manna that God has given them to eat. They long passionately for a different food source, saying, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we used to eat in Mitzrayim, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Here, the people's longing and yearning quite literally takes them out of the truth of their lived experience, which is that they are actually being nourished every day by manna, which, P.S., tastes exactly like you want it to, and it's being given to them directly by God. Instead, they create a distorted vision of the past in which Egypt was a culinary paradise, which seems pretty doubtful given what we know about the reality of Egyptian slavery. Here, the people have been led completely astray by their longing. God ultimately becomes furious, and the place where the people die as a result is named Kivrot HaTa'ava, the graves of longing. The message seems pretty clear. Yearning for the wrong thing can be fatal. But this negative perspective is not the only way that our tradition thinks about longing. The Hasidic teacher, Rabbi Aharon of Karlin, teaches, K'fi godel hata'ava v'hatshuka, kach niten lo. What we will be granted in life is in direct proportion to the intensity of our desires and our yearnings. Here, longing does exactly the opposite. Instead of taking us out of the world, our willingness to yearn deeply can make our lives more expansive. Think about Hannah, the mother of the prophet Shmuel, whose intense yearning for a child not only gives her the courage to stand up to Eli, the high priest, when he misjudges her, but also appears to possess so much power that it actually influences God, who grants that her prayers be answered. So perhaps the question is not simply whether longing is good or bad. Maybe the more interesting question is, where does our longing take us? Does it take us out of the lives that we have been given, or does it draw us more deeply into them? A midrash about this week's Parashat offers some insight. The midrash imagines Moshe's longing to enter the land becoming so powerful that a number of surprising things start to happen. First of all, the day of his death refuses to end. The day knows that if the sun sets, then Moshe's death will have to take place, and he will die without entering the land. So, in an extraordinary act of solidarity with Moshe, the day simply refuses to conclude. The sun will not set. Moshe's longing has literally taken the world out of its natural order. The second thing that happens is that God engages Moshe in a kind of It's a Wonderful Life type scene, allowing Moshe to experience what would actually happen if his wish were granted and he lived long enough to enter the land. In the vision that God shares, Moshe is present in the land, but Yehoshua is now the leader of the Israelites, as God has already promised him. Moshe goes to Yehoshua's home instead of Yehoshua coming to his. They walk together with Yehoshua on the right, now occupying the position of honor, and then they enter the tent of meeting. The pillar of cloud descends and creates a partition between Moshe and Yehoshua, and God speaks privately to Yehoshua. When the cloud retreats, Moshe asks him, "What did God reveal to you?" To which Yehoshua responds, I'm sure feeling terrible in this moment, "Well, when God revealed God's self to you, you didn't tell me what was revealed, so I don't think I'm supposed to tell you." At that moment, Moshe cries out, 100 deaths rather than this? Fine, I'm ready to die. I find this story incredibly poignant. Pirkei Avot warns us that longing can take us out of the world, and the midrash goes even further. Moshe's longing to go into the land takes the entire world out of its natural order, and it also takes Moshe out of his own life. In order for his wish to be fulfilled, Moshe has to become someone that he never was before. Not the leader, not the teacher, not the person to whom God speaks face to face, but the one waiting outside the intimate conversation between God and someone else. In this midrash, God doesn't tell Moshe that his longing to go into the land is wrong. Instead, God very lovingly helps Moshe to understand his own heart. And I believe it is here that Moshe's yearning begins to shape-shift. It moves from something that takes him out of the world to something that expands his ability and capacity as a leader. There's a concept in musical theater. Are there any other drama people from high school here besides me? There must be a few, yeah. Okay, there's an idea in musical theater called the hill behind the hill. It's a narrative structure in which the protagonist thinks that they want one thing, and they spent the whole first act trying to achieve it. Only when they get to the top of that first hill do they discover that the thing they thought they wanted was actually pointing to something much deeper. There's another hill behind the first hill, and they spend the rest of the play trying to reach that second hill. In the midrash, God gives Moshe the opportunity to climb to the top of that first metaphorical hill by letting him see exactly what entering the land would be like. And once he gets there, he can finally see the hill behind the hill. He discovers that what he's longing for is not simply to enter the land. Hiding behind that longing is something much more primal and more painful. Moshe does not want his life, the life that he has known, the life of being leader, teacher, prophet, the one who speaks to God. He doesn't want his life to end. I'm turning 60 this year. Now, I know to some of you that seems very young, and to some of you it seems impossibly old. And though I may only be at the halfway point of Moshe's life, I can tell you that I'm having a lot of feelings about it. For me, the view from the first hill has been the realization that the reason that I've been watching so many TV shows about people in their 20s falling in love is that I am longing to be young again. I wish I could tell you that after going through the process of writing this Dvar Torah, I am now striding confidently up the second hill, having discovered that what I'm really longing for is to be fully alive the way you sometimes are when you're young, and to make sure to savor every experience in the life that lies ahead of me. But if I told you that, I would be lying. I am currently somewhere in the valley after the first hill, where at least now I have a theory for why I got so obsessed by that show about the gay rival hockey players who fall in love that I watched it twice through, much to the bemusement of my husband. But I still haven't fully embodied a newer version of my longing that will bring me more deeply into my life, rather than out of it, watching other people's fake lives on television. As I gaze up at the second hill, I may not yet know exactly how I will climb it, but I do know that I will have Moshe along as my wilderness guide. Because in this week's Parsha, Moshe ultimately does exactly what I am trying to figure out how to do. Once he better understands his deeper longing, he is able to rechannel it so that it can animate his life rather than dampening it. If we read the rest of the Parsha through the lens of the midrash I just shared, something remarkable begins to emerge. Once Moshe recognizes the inevitability of his mortality, he takes all of the energy of his longing and his yearning, and he pours it into the one kind of immortality that is still available to him, teaching the people what they will need to know to enter the land, so that even if he must die, the beliefs that have animated his life will not die with him. Suddenly, both the Parashat and Moshe within it come alive. It's like a burst of spiritual creativity has been released in Moshe. He teaches the two great guiding principles of the Jewish people, both the Ten Commandments and the Shema. He is reminded of who he is, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, and he takes that role up with everything he's got left. He even offers the people a profound teaching about longing, born of his own hard-won experience. He knows that eventually they will stray from everything he is teaching them. They will worship other gods. They will lose their way. And what will bring them back? Moshe tells them, but if you search there, in the place where you have strayed, you will find God if only you search with all of your heart and all of your soul. Moshe, who now understands the power of longing, teaches the people that when they're lost or stuck, all they need to do is to long to return to God with all their heart and all their soul, using the same language as the Shema. He reassures them that if they follow their longing, it will lead them back to where they belong. Today is Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort. Now, it may not feel like the most comforting or comfortable message of all time for me to ask you to double down on your longings in search of the holiness that may be hiding inside of them. It means for me, among other things, that I will have to live with my intense longing right now to both give and receive words of comfort and wisdom about what we have witnessed in our city this past week, in the streets and in the public square, without knowing when or whether it will be fulfilled. But I still believe, even so, that by leaning into our deepest yearnings, we will give our hearts and perhaps our lives an opportunity to become more expansive. As we set off on our own 40-day hike from Tisha B'Av towards the two peaks in the distance, with Yom Kippur in view just behind Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to work on having the courage to try it out. And I invite you to join me on the journey. Shabbat Shalom.